All right, so I want to kind of just work through another radical problem that is maybe a little more complex than the last ones that I showed you. Sometimes your radicals are going to contain variables with exponents underneath the radical signs. So I want to show you how to, of course, work those out. Okay, so let's just start here with this 20. Of course, we want to break the 20 up into factors and try to find a factor of 20 that is a perfect square, because that's going to help us out. So knowing my factors of 20, we have, of course, 1 and 20, we have 2 and 10, and we have 4 and 5. 4 is a perfect square, so I'm going to break 20 up into the square root of 4 times the square root of 5. That tells me I know that the square root of 4 times the square root of 5 is going to be the square root of 20. Now you notice I'm kind of ignoring the variables for just a moment, okay? So let's just kind of box those off and leave those off to the side and deal with this first. All right, so the square root of 4, as you recall from the last video, is going to be plus or minus 2. 5 is a prime number, therefore we cannot factor this any further, and taking the square root of 5 is going to give us a decimal, and we don't want to deal with that right now. And so we're going to leave the square root of 5 just as the square root of 5. Okay, now let's set this off to the side and deal with our variables. All right, so we have the square root of x squared y to the 4th. Now, I find it easiest, and it's a personal preference here, I find it easiest to, when I'm dealing with variables and their exponents, to remember that taking the square root of something is the same thing as raising it to the 1/2 power, okay? So that's what I'm going to do. I am actually going to just rewrite this and take away this radical sign, and I'm going to replace it with the exponent of 1/2. Now, if you're confused about that or whatever, I'd really encourage you to go back and look at some review material on fraction exponents or fractional exponents, okay? But again, just really quickly, the square root, taking the square root of a value is the same thing as raising that to the 1/2 power. Okay, so now I can use my exponent properties to finish simplifying this problem. So when I have a product to a power, I basically take each exponent and multiply it by the exponent that's on the outside of your parentheses. So I'm going to do 2 times 1/2. Okay, so that's going to give me x to the 2 times 1/2 power. Well, 2 times 1 is 2. 1 times 2 is 2. So x is going to be to the 2/2 power, which really leaves us with x, which tells us that the square root of x squared is x. Okay, so I'm going to just write that out here. The square root of x squared equals x. All right. I'm going to circle that so I don't forget it. Now let's deal with the y. I have y to the 4th to the 1/2 power. So again, I'm going to multiply those exponents. 4 times 1/2 is the same thing as 4 halves, which equals 2. So my y, the square root of y to the 4th, equals y squared. So what I have to go back and do now is take this x and this y squared and squeeze it in here, okay? So typically, again, once you have square rooted something and it's no longer under the radical, it needs to all go in front of the radical. So this is going to end up being plus or minus 2xy squared times the square root of 5. Okay, all right, so let's do another one. Let's say we have the square root of 32 x to the 4th, y to the 6th. Okay, so again, I like to focus on the numerical values first. I'm going to break that up into factors. That's going to be the square root of 16 times the square root of 2. And again, the reason I'm using 16 and 2 is 16 is a perfect square. So the square root of 16 is plus or minus 4 times the square root of 2. Okay, now let's deal with my variables. So I have x to the 4th, y to the 6th, all to the 1/2 power. Again, taking the square root of a number is the same thing as raising it to the 1/2 power. So now I multiply my exponents. 4 times 1/2 is going to be 4 halves, or 2. Then I do 6 times 1/2. 6 times 1/2 is 6 over 2, which is 3. Okay, so the square root of x to the 4th, y to the 6th is x squared, y to the 3rd. And so now I want to put everything together. So I end up with, running out of space there, plus or minus 4 x squared, y to the 3rd, times the square root of 2. Good luck.